Chapter 2066. In a cave some distance away, there was a group of people sitting in a circle, drinking, eating and chatting. When they got excited, laughter could be heard. Boss is still the best. He went up to take a look and knew that it was Hunyuan from the Nebula Immortal sect. Fortunately, we didn't go up to join in the fun. Otherwise, we might have ended up like those two groups of idiots. That's right. When we went over to take a look earlier, the two groups of people were all unconscious on the ground. Their belongings were all taken away. The two leaders woke up first, but one of them wanted to use a knife to attack those people. But he didn't expect that even his wrist bone would be broken. Speaking of which, it's already good that those three people didn't take their lives. If it were anyone else, their belongings would have been taken, and they wouldn't have been able to keep their lives. That Hunyuan is from the Nebula Immortal sect after all. He wouldn't be so ruthless. He would definitely hesitate to end so many people's lives. Now, those two teams have already left with their tails between their legs. Boss is also kind and didn't kill them all. That's right. Boss is kind. As the crowd spoke, they kept flattering their boss. Some of them even poured wine for them. When the leader of these people heard the crowd's words, he was also in a good mood. He laughed and raised his wine bowl. Come on, let's drink, let's drink. Outside, Fengjiu smelled the fragrance of wine and meat, and smiled like a cunning fox. She gestured to Zhuojunyue. How is it? I didn't say anything wrong, right? These people must have meat. Smell it, there's also the fragrance of wine. Let's get some back for the old man. Okay. Zhuojunyue nodded, and looked at the two sentries in front. He said to Fengjiu, one each. Okay. The two of them rushed forward. Before the sentries noticed, they were already behind them. With a chop, the items on the two sentries fell into their hands. At the same time, the two who were knocked unconscious fell to the ground. The two of them looked at each other and smiled at the same time. Smelling the aroma of the meat and wine, they walked inside. Just then, they heard a voice from inside. Flip the roast meat, don't burn it. Hearing this, Fengjiu swallowed his saliva. Sigh, she was indeed a layman. She did not like to eat fasting pills. She only liked to eat grains and meat. She walked briskly to the cave and smiled as she poked her head into the cave. However, the people inside were so frightened that they were in a state of panic. Ah, it's that green-robed youth. Hiss! Why are these two people back? The people who were sitting around the barbecue fire at the entrance of the cave were startled by the sudden intrusion of the two people. One by one, they jumped up high into the air and quickly retreated into the cave, crowding it densely. Hee, you don't have to be afraid. We don't have any ill intentions. Fengjiu smiled and sniffed the roast meat. This roast meat smells really good. Seeing this scene and hearing the green-robed youth's words, the middle-aged man in the lead calmed down and said, If you like it, I'll give this roast meat to you. He only hoped that they would leave quickly after taking the roast meat. Chapter 2067. When the middle-aged man in the lead saw the green-robed young man's eyes darting towards the jug of wine, the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. He forced a smile and said, It's all right, it's fate that brought us together. I'll give you this roasted wild boar, and that jug of wine over there as well. They could hunt again if the wild boar was gone. If the wine was gone, they could buy it again. If they lost their treasures and lives, it would be a huge loss. It's hard to refuse such kindness. Since you've said so, we'll accept it. She said with a smile and glanced at Zhuojunyue. Zhuojunyue took a few steps forward and put the jug of wine into his space. Then, he returned to the area where the wild boar was roasted. He and Fengjiu each carried a wild boar and walked out. The rest of the men followed behind them and gulped as they looked at the wild boar they were carrying. Their faces were full of greed. At this moment, the young man in green who was walking in front suddenly turned around, scaring the men into stopping in their tracks. There's no need to send us off. You can stay here. Fengjiu waved at them happily. Then, he and Zhuojunyue carried the roasted wild boar towards the old man. The men behind them stood there and stared blankly. After a long while, they regained their senses. One of them muttered, This young man in green is more like a bandit than we are. He's a bandit among bandits. Boss, the wild boar we hunted with great difficulty is gone just like that. We even lost such a big jug of wine. Another man said faintly as he looked in the direction the two men had left. Although they were far away, they could still smell the aroma of the roasted meat from here. Useless. The middle-aged man in the lead glared at them. Those are just worldly possessions. If they're gone, so be it. Our lives and our treasures are safe. If they want the roasted meat and wine, we'll just give them to them. Boss, the two men who were on guard duty were only knocked unconscious. They're not dead. The other two men quickly walked back and supported the two unconscious men. It's good that they're not dead. Get them into the cave. He waved his hand and said, Boss, should we go back and hunt some wild animals? Our brothers haven't eaten meat for half a month. One of them mustered up the courage to ask, Go back. Do you think it's a short way to go hunting? If it was close, those two bastards wouldn't have come here to ask for things. The middle-aged man said angrily, Don't we still have fasting pills? Just eat some fasting pills. Seeing that he was angry, none of them dared to say a word. On the other side, the old man who was resting in the cave was humming a tune as he muttered, Little girl, you didn't listen to this old man. This old man already said that there are no wild animals in this area. But you still don't believe me. I don't believe that you can go out and bring back wild animals. However, as he was muttering to himself, his nose suddenly sniffed, and he couldn't help but follow the smell outside. When he saw the two people carrying a roasted wild boar back, he couldn't help but widen his eyes in astonishment. Hiss! This little girl really brought back game? He ran forward excitedly and couldn't help but ask, Where did you get this? It's actually roasted. Don't tell me you stole it? Chapter 2068. How is that possible? Fengjiu raised her voice slightly and looked at him with a smile. Do you think I'm the kind of person who would rob someone? This roast pig was given to us by someone, and they even gave us a jar of wine. Hearing this, the old man glanced at her strangely, his face full of disbelief. Someone gave it to us? How come he didn't know that the people here were so friendly? Of course it was given to us. Fengjiu said as she carried the roast pig inside and set it up. Then she took out a small knife and cut a small piece for the old man. Come, try it. Alright, there's wine too. She glanced at Zhuo Junyue. Zhuo Junyue's eyes were smiling as he took out the jar of wine and placed it to the side. He heard the old man exclaim softly, You actually managed to get some wine? You're good. How did you do it? I've been out here for so many years. How come I've never encountered such a good thing? He took out his empty wine gourd and drank some, smacking his lips. Although it can't compare to my original wine, it's still a good spirit wine. Fengjiu cut a piece of meat for Zhuo Junyue and said, Such a big wild boar is enough for us to eat for a few days. Later, put away the rest. When you want to eat more, you can take it out and roast it. You're giving this jar of spirit wine to the old man? Han Yuanzi asked cheerfully as he poured the wine into his wine gourd. His wine gourd was a magic artifact. Not to mention one jug of wine, it could even hold 10 jugs. He hadn't bought wine for a long time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have run out of wine here. Fine, I'll give it to you. It's no big deal. Fengjiu said indifferently as she cut a large piece of meat and ate it. The three of them ate meat and drank wine. After a night's rest, they set off again the next day. The journey was relatively peaceful, except that the temperature was getting hotter and hotter. Whether it was day or night, it was the same. The deeper they went, the more steam rose from the ground. We're almost there. Do you see that? It's that mountain. The old man wiped his sweat and pointed at a large volcano not far away. The Fires Park grass should be halfway up the mountain. Let's go there and look for it. There might be obsidian there. We don't have to wait for the next eruption. Fengjiu looked up and saw the faint steam rising from the volcano. He couldn't help but ask, Won't it too dangerous for us to go up there? Although the magma is at the bottom of the earth, if it's halfway up the mountain, don't worry. It's fine. Look, there are people halfway up the mountain. The old man pointed at the people who were climbing halfway up the mountain. Seeing this, Fengjiu nodded. All right. Then go and take a look. If there's anything wrong, you must leave immediately. I know. Old man, do I need you to remind me? Only then did the three of them walk towards the volcano. When they reached the bottom, other than some small pieces of Fires Park stone, They didn't see any large pieces. However, as they got closer, the dozen or so teams guarding the foot of the mountain stared at them, as if they were trying to guess their origins. Do we all go up? Or do we leave one person down here? Hun Yuanzi looked at Fengjiu and asked. If there was one person left down here, it would undoubtedly be Zhuo Junyue. He had to go up, and Fengjiu didn't need to be mentioned. Chapter 2069. If one of them stayed behind, he would be seen as a thorn in everyone's side. It would be better to go up together, so that they could take care of each other. All right, let's go then. The old man nodded and glanced at Zhuo Junyue. The three of them went up the mountain. Although they could fly on their swords in this place, they wouldn't be able to find what they were looking for. Therefore, everyone who came here to look for the Firespark Stone and immortal grass had to walk. This way, they wouldn't let go of the chance to find the treasure. Who are those people? I don't know who they are. However, that old man's strength is unfathomable. The other two are nothing to be afraid of. Other teams are made up of dozens of people. They actually dared to come here with just 3 people. Their guts are not small. Since they are here to die, why don't I send them on their way? A fat man said. He stared at the 3 figures with a murderous look in his eyes. Then he took out a bow from his Qingquan bag. When the people around saw this, their eyes flashed. Someone asked, "Are you trying to kill them? If you can't shoot 3 arrows at the same time, they won't let you go easily. What's so difficult about shooting 3 arrows at the same time? My archery skills are exquisite. I have no problem shooting 5 arrows at the same time," the fat man said as he knocked his bow and aimed at the 3 people who were going up the mountain. In the crowd below, there were some people with gloating smiles on their faces as they stared at the fat man. More than half of the people present recognized that the old man was Hun Yuan from the Nebula Immortal sect. Otherwise, why would he let the 3 of them come so close? The primordial chaos of the Nebula Immortal sect was Mount Tai of the sect. His fighting strength alone was probably comparable to their entire team, and only that person who overestimated himself would dare to take out a bow and arrow to kill them. He was sure that if this arrow was shot, then that group of people would not be far from death. Many people knew about it but didn't say anything. They just watched as if they were watching a good show. Some even felt that it wasn't lively enough and started to jeer. Shoot accurately. Don't let everyone see you as a joke. Zhuo Junyue looked back and said to the 2 of them, "Someone wants to use us as a target. Ignore them. Let's go. If they can hit us, that's their ability." The old man snorted as he paid attention to the ground below his feet. There were no stairs on the path up the mountain. Every step had to be taken with extreme caution. Otherwise, one would roll down the mountain. Rolling down was a small matter. But the problem was that if one rolled down, their skin would rub against the ground of the volcano. It would be difficult to protect their lives. Be careful. The most important thing is to not fall. Chapter 2070. However, the man who fell was howling in pain. He couldn't even stand up, and had to be helped to the back to lie down. See, even falling down here is a problem. The old man glanced at the 2, and continued to climb up the mountain. The volcano was very steep, and there were very few places to stand firmly. Therefore, everyone who climbed up was very careful. However, at this moment, 3 sharp arrows were shot out with a whoosh, and shot towards Fengjiu, and the other 2 with a fierce momentum. Hearing the sound behind him, Fengjiu smiled. "Let's see who's faster. Let's hit them in one shot." "No problem," Hun Yuanzi replied. Just as the 3 arrows were about to hit them, the 3 people suddenly turned around and grabbed the 3 arrows. In almost an instant, the 3 arrows flew out of their hands and attacked the fat man with the bow at the foot of the mountain. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 sharp arrows shot down from above at a speed so fast that it was impossible to cover one's ears. They shot towards the fat man with a sharp and cold aura. This scene happened so quickly that no one could react in time. It was only when a shrill scream came out of the man's mouth that everyone regained their senses. However, when they saw this scene, they were all stunned. The shrill scream reverberated in the air. At this moment, whether it was the people at the foot of the mountain or those who had climbed halfway up the mountain, all of them looked in the direction of the scream. The fat man with the bow and arrow stood stiffly. His eyes were wide open in fear, and his face was drained of blood. His expression was one of extreme fear, and between his eyebrows, there was an arrow feather deeply embedded there. A trace of blood seeped out from the gap between the arrow feather and his flesh, dripping down. Further down, there was also an arrow stuck in his throat. However, this arrow had directly pierced through. It was also a fatal blow. Further down, there was also an arrow protruding from his chest. This arrow had also pierced through his body, leaving only a small section of the arrow trembling slightly. Only at this moment did the rigid body slowly fall backwards. Bang! With a loud bang, the fat man fell to the ground. Due to the weight of his body, the ground shook when he fell. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. They couldn't help but take a few steps back to distance themselves from the fat man. 3 arrows were shot simultaneously. All 3 arrows were caught and reflected. All 3 arrows hit the fat man's fatal points. For a moment, everyone's breathing became heavier. Those who didn't recognize Han Yuanzi were even more shocked. They had a new understanding of the 3 people, and knew that they were not to be trifled with. Those who knew that the old man was Han Yuanzi were even more shocked. Han Yuanzi aside, even those 2 people were so powerful. They really didn't expect it, At this moment, they rejoiced that they didn't rush forward to deal with them. Otherwise, their fate would be similar to the fat man's. Chapter 2071. When the people halfway up the mountain saw this scene, they also glanced at the 3 people below. Some of them recognized Han Yuanzi, while others did not. Unlike the other people who were probing and vigilant, Fengjiu and the other 2 were arguing about whose arrow was faster. "I'm the slowest," Zhuo Junhua said as he continued climbing. Among the 3 of them, his arrow was the slowest, but it still hit the heart and killed him in one shot. "It's normal that you are the weakest and slowest." As Primordial Chaos spoke, his eyes narrowed into slits as he smiled. "I'm the fastest, and I stabbed his throat." Fengjiu glanced at him. "I'm clearly faster than you." "No, I'm clearly faster." He refused to admit that he was slower than her. All right, let's go." Fengjiu did not really argue with him, and continued climbing. He said to the other 2, "Be careful, and don't just look for things below." In such a place, the people at the foot of the mountain might be stunned, but the people above were also staring at them. If one of them was up to no good, who knew what they would do? "Hey, look, there's a firespark stone over there." As expected, there are more in this area. We don't even have to wait for the volcano to erupt. I think no one came to look for it after the last eruption. As the old man spoke, he moved to the other side and dug out the buried firespark stone. Haha. I didn't expect that just a little bit would be so big. This is definitely the biggest piece I've dug up so far. Han Yuanzi said excitedly as he handed the firespark stone to Fengjiu and Zhuo Junhua. Fengjiu glanced at it and said, "It's useless for you to have so many of these things. At most, you can sell them for money, but you shouldn't be short of money." Hee, that's true. What does this old man not have? He subconsciously raised his chin with a smug look on his face. Because he was in a good mood, he casually handed over the palm-sized firespark stone in his hand. "Here, this is for you." This old man saw that you didn't find a big one. Hearing this, Fengjiu was a little surprised and looked at him strangely. "For me? Well, here you go," the old man said with a smile. "If you give it to me now, you won't ask for it back later, will you?" She stared at him suspiciously. How is that possible? Is the old man such a petty person? He snorted and tossed the firespark stone to her. Take it. You can always find something like this again. As for the celestial grass, if you find it, remember to give this old man one. If you really can't find it, this old man can use the firespark stone I found to exchange with you." Hearing this, Fengjiu pursed her lips and smiled. She took the firespark stone and put it away. "Then I'll have to thank you." Saying this, she continued to climb. When the people above saw that they had found a palm-sized firespark stone, they couldn't help but be surprised. Although they hadn't searched all the places below, how could they not find such a big firespark stone? The people below really had it easy. One of the teams looked at each other. They were originally dissatisfied with the 3 people who had used arrows to kill their team member. Now that they saw this scene, they immediately had other thoughts. Chapter 2072. Seeing the falling rocks, the three people at the bottom quickly dodged. With a misstep, Zhuojunjia slid down a few meters before coming to a stop. At this moment, the people who purposely stepped on the rocks did not stop. Instead, they became even more arrogant. These people are really evil. The old man frowned and looked down. Blockhead, how are you? Are you alright? I'm fine. Zhuojunjia replied and continued to climb. Fengjiu looked up and her eyes turned cold. With a flick of her hand, a few silver needles shot out from her hand and pierced through the soles of the people's feet. Hiss! A few gasps of surprise were heard. When those people stepped on the gravel, who would have thought that the silver needles in their boots would pierce upwards, directly piercing into the soles of their feet, causing them to gasp in pain. Because of the sharp pain in their feet, they were unable to stand firm and fell down one after another. As they rolled down, they tried to grab onto rocks to stabilize themselves. However, the impact of the fall was too great. Coupled with the loss of balance, they rolled down the mountainside. Bang bang bang. A few loud thuds were heard. Not only were the people at the bottom stunned, but the people at the top were also shocked. They did not expect that the people who attacked the three people would fall down first. After seeing what happened to the three people, the others were very wary of the three people. Naturally, they did not dare to provoke them. Thus, Fengjiu and the other two slowly climbed up while looking for firespark stones. When they reached the mountainside, the three of them found a protruding rock and sat down to rest. Although this mountain is big, there are so many people looking. Can we really find a good firespark grass? Fengjiu looked at the old man and asked. They had found many firespark stones, but they did not find a single stalk of firespark grass. Moreover, they were not the only ones looking for it. Keep your voice down. They might not be looking for fairy grass. Ordinary people would not recognize it. The old man lowered his voice and said. Fengjiu rolled her eyes. Do you think these people are stupid? They've been here for years. How could they not know what you know? Even if they know, it doesn't matter. If they find it, we can just snatch it, right? The old man grinned maliciously. This was what he had in mind. However, Fengjiu was a little surprised when he heard this. He looked at him with a faint smile and said, You are the sex Mount Tai. How dare you steal from others? TSK. So what? They weren't good people either. Which one of them wasn't fighting and robbing in this place? Girl, let me tell you, you're still too inexperienced. In this world, people who follow the rules become inflexible. People must learn to be flexible and flexible. The old man said slowly. He glanced at those people and said, Do you think that if we found the angel grass first, they wouldn't snatch it? Let me tell you, if the other party is a righteous and kind person, then we can't make a move, because a person has to have principles, don't you think so? And these people are obviously not righteous and kind people. If you don't rob them, you'll just wait for them to rob you. Otherwise, they wouldn't talk about principles and principles with you. These people are all people who bully the kind and fear the evil. Chapter 2073. Is that so? That's why this old man said that we are somewhat similar. How about it? Do you want to reconsider taking me in? With a sect like mine as your disciple, you've really profited. The old man looked at her expectantly. Hearing this, Fengjiu rested her chin on her hand and smiled. I can think about it. Hearing that there was hope, the old man became very excited. Why do you need to think about it? Let's just settle it. How about this? This old man has some wine here. Want a few cups? Seeing that the old man was about to take out the wine, Fengjiu quickly stopped him. Wait, don't you know where we are? Is this a good time? Let's put this aside for now and talk about it later. This old man is afraid that you'll trick me again. He sighed and glanced at her. Why don't you teach me the Taiji Fist's mantra first? Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled. Suddenly her smile disappeared. No. She turned her head and looked to the other side, her gaze landing on Zhuojunjia. The old man saw that she was staring at Zhuojunjia and knew that she was guessing Zhuojunjia's background. For a moment he didn't say anything. He took a few sips of wine from his wine gourd and looked at the two of them. but the corners of his eyes were observing the movements around them. When he caught a glimpse of a quietly moving illuminating flame herb, he was so excited that he quickly blinked at Fengjiu and whispered, "Look over there, look over there. That's the illuminating flame herb." Fengjiu was slightly startled. Following his gaze, she saw that not far from her, a stalk of herb was quietly moving towards her. Moving towards her? She was slightly startled. Taking a closer look, she saw that the herb was indeed moving towards her. Didn't they say that the illuminating flame herb would run away when it saw people? Why was it moving towards her? Is that really the celestial herb? Are you sure? She lowered her voice and asked. How could I be wrong? It's this one. There are only 2 leaves on its fiery red stem. Its roots are similar to ginseng, but the roots are fiery red. Hiss! The old man stuttered. In the end, he sucked in a breath of cold air and his eyes widened. Look! Another one has appeared. Fengjiu looked over and saw that another stalk of brilliant fire grass had appeared out of nowhere. Moreover, it was heading in her direction again. She was astonished to see this. At this moment, the 2 stalks of illuminating fire grass had arrived at her feet. The old man was about to tie them up with a red rope in his hand, but he was stopped by a look from Fengjiu. After the celestial herb came to Fengjiu's side, it used one of its 2 leaves to gently touch Fengjiu's feet. Finally, the straight red stem bent down and pulled out the root that the old man said looked like a ginseng, but was fiery red in color. Then it leaped into Fengjiu's arms. And Fengjiu's eyes widened in astonishment. She thought that she had seen wrongly, but when she looked again, the celestial herb that had pulled it out had really leaped into her arms and hid in her clothes. Only the 2 small leaves were exposed. She was stunned. She couldn't figure out what was going on. Chapter 2074. While they were still in shock, the other angel grass quietly moved from behind them. Just like the first one, it pulled itself out and squeezed into Fengjiu's clothes. Seeing this scene, the 3 of them didn't react for a long time. Because they were sitting on the rock and didn't move, the people above didn't pay much attention to them. Therefore, except for the 3 of them, no one else saw the strange scene in front of them. The old man stared at Fengjiu and said, "Tell me what's going on." Fengjiu lowered her head and looked at the 2 angel grasses hiding in her clothes. While no one was paying attention, she took them into the space and planted them in the medicine field. Then, she spread her hands and said to the old man, "I don't know either. Didn't you say it already? This radiant flame grass didn't give birth to a medicine spirit. Now you ask me, but who should I ask? This kind of thing has never happened before. This old man has never heard of it either." As Hunyuan said this, he stared at Fengjiu and stroked his beard thoughtfully. "There must be something strange about your body." Hearing this, Fengjiu's heart skipped a beat. Something strange? What strange thing could there be on my body? She had never encountered this kind of situation before. How could she know what was wrong? But, when the old man mentioned something strange, it reminded her of the chaotic green lotus in her dantian. However, that chaotic green lotus hadn't caused any trouble for her for a long time. Now this matter shouldn't have anything to do with it, right? This angel grass is very spiritual. Although it doesn't have a medicine spirit, it's because of its innate spiritual nature that it can escape and move. The old man said, looking at Fengjiu and murmuring, "What is the reason? Could it be because of the pure spiritual aura on your body?" Ah, Fengjiu was surprised and asked, "The spiritual aura on my body? It shouldn't be, right?" She had a mysterious spiritual body, so the spiritual aura in her body was very pure. However, this purity couldn't have caused the angel grass to pull itself out and hide in her clothes, right? Forget it. Regardless of the reason, let's discuss what to do next. The old man said excitedly. He gestured for Zhuo Junyue to sit closer to him. He also moved closer to Fengjiu. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw many people staring at them. He turned around and glared at them. Then he set up a soundproof barrier. When the others saw this, they became even more curious. What exactly were those 3 people talking about? However, these 3 people's skills were too strange. If it was not necessary, they really did not want to provoke such people. Thus, when they saw the old man set up a soundproof barrier, they looked away. At this time, Hun Yuanzi approached Fengjiu and said to her with a smile, "Girl, in this case, we don't have to waste our efforts to find the fairy grass. How about this? Let's go to the back and find a place where there's no one around. The two of us will stand guard for you. You can release some of the pure spiritual aura in your body. Perhaps the fairy grass will come to us on its own." Hearing this, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. How could this work? If my spiritual aura was so useful, I wouldn't have to worry about not being able to find the precious angel grass. Chapter 2075. The reason why the celestial herb came to her after she pulled it out was probably because of the chaotic green lotus. Another reason was that the celestial herb was highly intelligent and had sensed the presence of the chaotic green lotus. However, she did not dare to reveal the presence of the chaotic green lotus. If anyone found out that she had the chaotic green lotus in her body, it would lead to endless consequences. Little girl, just give it a try. There's no harm in trying. The old man persuaded. He had not found a single stalk of celestial herb, so naturally, he hoped that this method would work. Fengjiu saw that he was insistent and said, "How about this? I'll give you one stalk of illuminating flame grass. Since we've found it, let's leave." "How can that be?" The old man hurriedly said. "It's not easy to come here and now we're here. How can we go back if we don't dig up a few more stalks?" "Dig up a few more stalks? Do you think that illuminating flame grass is cabbage? You can get it whenever you want to? Even if it's cabbage, you won't be able to get it at this time." As she spoke, she flicked her robes, dispelling the barrier that separated them as she walked back. Seeing that Fengjiu had already walked down, the old man hurriedly followed. Just once, okay? I've never seen that scene before, and I'm still curious." Seeing that he kept pestering her, Fengjiu knew that if this matter was not resolved, she would not be able to live in peace. Thus, she looked at him and said, "Let's go down and talk." Okay. The old man hurriedly agreed. The three of them came down from the mountainside. Although they were covered in dust, there were no scratches on their bodies. Seeing the three of them suddenly come down from the mountainside, the others were surprised. However, this was a good thing for them. If the three of them left, there would be no one to fight with them for the celestial herb or illuminating flame stone. No matter how they looked at it, it was a good thing. When the people below saw the three of them coming down, they could not help but take a few steps back. However, the three of them did not pay any attention to them and walked past them. "We'll reach the back after going around here. That's not where the magma is pouring down, so it's cooler over there. There are also some trees that can block the sunlight," the old man said as he led Fengjiu and Zhuo Junyue to the other side. Not long after they left, a group of mercenaries also arrived. It was Guan Xilin's group. When the 10 or so teams saw this mercenary, their eyes flashed slightly. This group of mercenaries was covered in blood and murderous aura. It was obvious that they had just experienced a massacre. Smelling the stench of blood, everyone naturally took a few steps back. It was easy to tell at a glance whether a person was easy to provoke or not. As for those who were not easy to provoke, they usually knew better than to provoke them. "It's here," the leader of the mercenary group said. He looked at the volcano and said, "Let's see if we can find it." "Leader, if we can't find any fire spark stones, we can bring them back. The people outside are fighting for them too," a mercenary said with a grin. Chapter 2076. "Don't worry, Captain. We know," everyone said with a smile. "Captain, you're injured. I don't think you should go up," Guan Xilin said as he looked at his shoulder. Although it had been bandaged for a few days, the wound hadn't healed yet. It was too dangerous to climb a volcano like this. Hearing this, the others also reacted. "Yes, Captain. I think Xiao Guan is right. You're not fully recovered yet, so you shouldn't climb." "Yes, Captain, how about this? The uninjured can go up, and the injured can stay here to guard. It's relatively safer this way," another mercenary said. "That's fine. Xiao Guan will lead you then," the captain said as he looked at Guan Xilin. "Regardless of whether you can find it or not, search around the mountainside. If you can't find it, come down." "Okay, I understand." Guan Xilin nodded and led a dozen mercenaries up the mountain. The others stayed below to guard against any sneak attacks. As for Fengjiu and the others who went to the back of the mountain, they found a place to sit down after seeing that there was no one else around except for the three of them. Hurry up, hurry up. Try again. The old man excitedly squatted down beside her, while Zhuo Junyue retreated a little to guard the surroundings. Fengjiu had no choice but to sit down and circulate the spiritual energy in her body. However, she suppressed the aura of the green lotus to prevent it from leaking out. Whether it was the green lotus or not, she couldn't let anyone else know about this. Therefore, in the end, the surroundings were completely silent. Not even half a stalk of fairy grass could be seen. How is it? Didn't I say it? It must be an accident. She spread out her hands as she spoke. Then, she retracted her aura and took out some barbecued meat from her space to eat. She looked at the disappointed old man and asked, "I'll give you one. I have 2 of them anyway. This old man will use Fire Spark stones to exchange with you. I won't take advantage of you," the old man said as he took out the Fire Spark stones he had obtained along the way and pushed them in front of her. Seeing this, Fengjiu didn't decline and kept all those things. At the same time, he handed over a small stalk of celestial grass. He glanced at him and said, "This kind of thing can't be used directly. You don't know how to refine pills or anything, so it won't be of much use even if you keep it. You don't have to worry about that. I'll just keep it." He took the angel grass and looked around before putting it away. "Junyue, come and eat something." Fengjiu shouted at Zhuo Junyue, who was standing guard. Zhuo Junyue turned around and walked towards them. He sat down beside them. The 3 of them sat around the barbecued meat and wine as they ate. "Don't drink too much. It's troublesome to get drunk in this place." As Fengjiu spoke, he saw the old man holding the wine gourd and pouring it into his mouth. He couldn't help but shake his head and pass a piece of meat to him. With this old man's alcohol tolerance, how can I get drunk? It's fine. This place is quite far from the front. No one will come here. Just as well, this old man can take a nap after drinking some wine. Anyway, with the 2 of you standing guard, this old man can rest assured. He laughed mischievously, holding the meat in one hand and the wine in the other. Seeing this, Fengjiu let him be. With the 2 of them standing guard, he could indeed rest assured and sleep. Chapter 2077. In the midst of the fight, some people rolled down from the top. For a moment screams and cries of alarm echoed. Guan Shilin, who was climbing up the mountain, saw this and said to the people below, "Let's go down first. It's not a good time to go up now." Although they were climbing up from the side of the mountain, it did not seem appropriate for them to continue climbing. However, just as he was about to descend the mountain, he raised his head and faintly saw a flash of light under the refraction of the sun on the mountaintop. Was that a Fire Spark stone? And a huge one at that. Thinking of this, he looked down at the people below and saw that the other mercenaries had safely gone down the mountain. Thus, he summoned his flying sword and flew up the mountain. Strange, why did that person go up on his sword? What is he trying to do? He went straight to the top of the mountain from the mountainside. Ah, look, there's a ray of light at the top of the volcano. Isn't that a Fire Spark stone? Heavens! How big is that Fire Spark stone? Why didn't I see it before? Hurry up and get it. Such a big Fire Spark stone is priceless. The people below rushed up and flew up on their swords. Guan Shilin, who had reached the top of the volcano first, also saw the Fire Spark stone. However, this piece of Fire Spark stone seemed to be a little different from the others. Ordinary Fire Spark stones were black and glowing, but this one was fiery red. The color was as if it had been burned by fire. The red color was beautiful, and he couldn't help but praise it when he saw it. "This stone is beautiful. I'll bring it back and give it to my sister. She'll definitely like it." Guan Shilin murmured softly. His resolute and calm face revealed a happy smile like a child. It was an expression that only appeared when he thought of his family. He went up and picked up the beautiful red stone, which was difficult to hold with both hands, and put it into his space ring. He planned to give it to Fengjiu as a gift when he returned. However, at this moment, a murderous aura came from behind him, causing his happy smile to disappear. He frowned and turned around, only to see a long sword coming at him. accompanied by a shout. Kid, hand over the treasure. Kid, you'll choke to death if you keep it to yourself. Kid, you've got guts. How dare he take the treasure for himself in front of so many people? Hand it over, and I'll leave your corpse intact. The cultivators shouted and surrounded Guanxilin with swords in hand. At this moment, another shout came from below, accompanied by a powerful aura. How dare you touch our ferocious tiger mercenary group? Kill. The members of the ferocious tiger mercenary group also rushed forward with swords in their hands. They surrounded Guanxilin. And as soon as the mercenaries surrounded them, the sounds of swords clashing could be heard. For a moment it was a chaotic battle. Some of the onlookers who didn't want to get involved couldn't help but be speechless. Are these people crazy? Although the Firespark stone is a little big, there's no need to go all out like this, right? When a man who was rushing forward heard this, he couldn't help but stop and glance at the man. What do you know? In this world, how could one succeed without risking their lives? Brothers, kill them for me. If he couldn't snatch that brat's, he would snatch someone else's. I've been here for more than half a month, waiting for an opportunity like this. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed forward with a dozen people behind him. Chapter 2078. Kill. Kill that brat. Snatch that treasure. Swoosh. Clang. Clang. Shouts rang out along with the sounds of battle. It was a chaotic battle from mid-air to the ground. Because it was a chaotic battle, it was inevitable that the people around them would be injured. Some of the cultivators who were fighting Guanxilin were furious when they saw that they were injured. How dare you attack me? Do you want to die? Take this. Hiss. Damn it. I'm going to kill you. The battle became more and more chaotic as the battle went on. Saber chi and sword chi flew all over the place, and cold light flashed everywhere. Some of the people saw that the situation was not good, and had already retreated quietly. However, those who were still charging forward were either injured or killed. The people who were attacking Guanxilin became more and more frightened as the battle went on. Especially when they saw Guanxilin waving his saber and sending out a sharp sword chi. They all shouted and quickly dodged. Some of them could not dodge in time, and were cut in half by the saber energy. The scene was bloody and shocking. Hiss! Where did this killing god come from? The people who had retreated and the cultivators who had been watching from afar were shocked. Although the mystic mercenary was only a mystic, his battle strength was astonishing. Everyone who went up to him died under his long saber. Corpses lay around him, and the number of corpses around him made people shudder. After Guanxilin killed the people around him, he turned his saber and pointed it at the ground. He shouted, "Who dares to snatch it from me?" The people who were lucky enough to survive retreated at the same time. They did not dare to get close to him. What a joke. Although the treasure was good, it was useless if they lost their lives. Moreover, this brat was too strange. He was only a mystic, but his battle strength was so shocking. He was so freakishly strong. They would not dare to snatch that treasure if they did not want their lives. The people of the ferocious tiger mercenary group came to Guanxilin's side. The leader looked at him. "Little Guan, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Guanxilin shook his head and looked at the people around him with a cold expression. Then he said to his commander, "Commander, I'm going to give the stone I found to my sister." The leader of the ferocious tiger mercenary group nodded. "Don't worry, our mercenary group also has rules. Apart from the mission, we can distribute the things we find in this forest. There's no need to hand them over to the mercenary group." "Thank you, Captain," he said in a deep voice. "Ha ha ha, what's there to thank me for? This is the freedom of our group." The leader said before asking, "Did you find any radiant fire grass halfway up the mountain?" "Yes, I didn't see him," Guanxilin said. "All right then, let's find a place to rest first. Since we're already here, we can't leave empty-handed. Let's find some time to go up again. Even if we can't find any brilliant fire grass, we can still bring back some brilliant firestones." "Okay." He nodded and followed the group to the back of the mountain, towards the shade. At this moment Feng Jiu, who was resting in the shade behind the mountain, was leaning against a rock with his eyes closed. The old man was drunk, and had fallen asleep long ago. Zhuo Junhua, on the other hand, was guarding him. Chapter 2079. When he saw that the group was the mercenary group he met in the forest, he couldn't help but be surprised. What a small world. He didn't expect to meet this group of mercenaries here again. The mercenary group also saw Zhuo Junhua. The leader was slightly surprised, but then he laughed out loud. It's that young master. Does this mean that the Hunyuan immortal monarch is also resting in front? I didn't expect to meet him again. As he spoke, he turned to the people behind him and said, Brothers, find a place to sit down and rest. I'll go ahead and greet them. Thus, the group found a place to rest. After sitting down, they surrounded Guan Shilin and asked, Little Guan, what does the stone you found look like? Take it out and let us have a look. Yeah, I think I saw a very big one. Seeing that everyone was curious, Guan Shilin laughed loudly. No problem. He took out the big stone from his space ring and placed it in front of everyone. This is the stone. Look at it carefully. The shape is quite nice. Wow, it's so big. I don't think I can carry it with both hands, right? Wow, it's a fiery red firespark stone. Ah, that's right. I've heard that this is a top-grade firespark stone. It's formed after being tempered by magma. I've only heard about it before, but I've never seen it before. I didn't expect to see such a large piece of fiery red firespark stone today. TSK, look at the color. It's really the color of fire. It's so beautiful. Yeah, it's my first time seeing such a fiery red firespark stone. Guan Shilin listened to everyone with a smile on his face. I think it's beautiful too. My sister will definitely like it when she sees it. He touched the big stone and said, thinking, should he ask someone to carve this fiery obsidian into a shape and give it to little Nine? Little Guan, you're so nice to your sister. That's right. Giving such a precious firespark stone to your sister? You're really generous. If this thing was sold, it would fetch a sky-high price. As her brother, I've always been running around outside, so I rarely spend time with her. She even has to worry about me. So whenever I find something interesting outside, I'll keep it for her and give it to her to make her happy when we get back. Guan Shilin said with a smile as he put away the big rock. Hee, you don't have a wife yet, right? If he had a wife, things would be different. A mercenary beside him winked and said. Hearing this, Guan Shilin grinned. Yes, I don't have a wife. But even if I do, I believe that my wife will treat my sister as well as I do. By then, it'll be better to have one more person to dote on her. Ha ha ha. That's because you haven't married yet. Many people put their wives first after they get married. If they marry a hag, it's even worse. They have to be controlled. Are you talking about the one next door to your house? That woman is indeed very ferocious. Once, I saw her twisting Li Er's ear and lifting him up. Those curses could be heard from 2 streets away. Ha ha, that's right. You don't know, but Li Er often comes to drink with me after he gets beaten up. He's a man, but he doesn't have any manliness left. Chapter 2080. Others would not be able to understand the relationship between him and Xiaojiu. From the moment he opened his eyes that year and saw that petite figure standing in front of him to protect him from the pack of wolves alone, he secretly swore in his heart that in this lifetime, even if he had to give up his own life, he would protect her. No matter what she did in the future, no matter if she was recognized by the world or not, he would always stand by her side. Although Xiaojiu was not related to him by blood, she was more like a family to him than a blood relative. Thinking of the life-saving things she gave him in the space, his face couldn't help but soften. Others said that his little sister was lucky to have him as her brother, but he always thought that he was lucky to have little Jiu as his little sister. On the other side, the leader of the ferocious tiger mercenary group came to Zhuo Junhua and bowed. Sir, we meet again. His gaze shifted behind the man and saw that not far away, an old man and a young man were resting at the foot of the mountain. Seeing this, a smile appeared on his face. Zhuo Junhua nodded and did not say anything else. Our group is resting in front. Sir Immortal, and that young sir are only 3 people. Do you want to sit with us? We even hunted some wild game on our way here. We can share some with Sir Immortal and the young Sir. The leader smiled, and thought that they probably did not have much to eat here. Since they had some wild game, he could share some with them. No need. Thank you. Zhuo Juanyue's voice was still cold and expressionless. Seeing this, the mercenary leader smiled. That's good. If you need anything, you can look for us. We will be resting here for the next few days. As he spoke, he cupped his fists and looked at the two sleeping people. Then he smiled and turned to leave. Fengjiu, whose eyes were half closed, could vaguely hear their conversation. However, thinking that Zhuo Junyue was watching over them, he relaxed and rested. Soon he fell asleep. Zhuo Junyue walked back, and saw that the old man was snoring in his sleep, while the young one could fall asleep with his thunderous snoring. It was amazing. He shook his head, and sat down cross-legged not far from the two of them. His eyes were closed as he rested, but his divine sense was still paying attention to the surrounding movements. It was only about 500 meters away from here. The mercenaries were roasting game over a fire, while discussing when they would go up the mountain to look for more firespark stones. When the sky gradually darkened and the smell of barbecued meat gradually spread, not only did Feng Nine, who was sleeping soundly, smell the meat, but the teams in front of the mountain also smelled the aroma of meat. Those people followed the aroma of the meat. When they saw that it was the group of mercenaries, they did not approach. Instead, they walked around the group of mercenaries and continued to walk forward. They actually saw the three people with unfathomable strength. Seeing this, they could only quietly leave the area. The people here were not to be trifled with. They did not dare to stay in the same place with them. If they were not careful, they would not know when they would be killed. As a result, Guan Shilin and Fengjiu were both in the same volcanic forest at the foot of the volcano. However, because they were 50 meters apart, neither of them knew that the other was here. Chapter 2081. Young Master. The leader of the ferocious tiger mercenary group came over again. However, this time, he brought a large piece of roasted meat. He walked over to Zhuo Junyue and saw that the youth in green had woken up. He smiled at him and said to the two of them, "We roasted some meat in front and brought some for you to eat." Fengjiu blinked and looked at the mercenary in front of him. After a while he remembered. "Oh, it's you. Young Master, you still remember me?" The leader of the ferocious tiger mercenary group was in his 30s or 40s. When he saw the handsome youth in green, he couldn't help but smile. "Didn't we meet in the forest a few days ago? You were talking to the old man then." Fengjiu pointed at Han Yuanzi, who was still asleep. "Old man?" The leader's smile froze. He looked at the youth in green in surprise. There weren't many people who dared to call Han Yuanzi an old man. Where did this young man come from? However, he didn't look like an ordinary person. "I came over in the afternoon and saw that the two of you were sleeping. So I cut some meat for you. Eat it while it's hot. If it's not enough, we have more." The leader handed the roasted meat over. "No need. Then I won't stand on ceremony." Two voices sounded at the same time. The former was Zhuo Junyue, while the latter was Fengjiu, who took the roasted meat. When he heard these two voices, the leader was startled. Then he smiled. Fengjiu took the roasted meat and glared at Zhuo Junyue. "This is the leader's good intentions. How can you reject it? No wonder the old man called you a blockhead." Zhuo Junyue's mouth twitched. He glanced at him speechlessly and then looked away. He didn't have the face to look. When it came to food, this person would put aside all pride and dignity. "All right then, I'll head back first," the mercenary leader said before turning around to leave. "Here." Fengjiu handed a piece of roasted meat to Zhuo Junyue. "Eat it." "I'm not hungry," he said, sitting quietly. Fengjiu shrugged and sat down cross-legged to eat. He also took out some wine to drink and said, "I found the firespark stone in the immortal grass, so I'm preparing to go back." Hearing this, Zhuo Junyue glanced at her, then glanced at the drunk old man and asked, "You plan to leave while the old man is drunk?" He was sure that if she left just like that, the old man would be so angry that he would want to pull out his beard. "I didn't want to stay here for long, and as I said, I still have to go back and take care of things. I've been away for a few days, and I don't know how things are at home. I have to go back and take a look." Fengjiu took a sip of wine and glanced at the old man. If he doesn't see me when he wakes up, he'll be fine in a few days. Besides, didn't I leave you my address? You can come and find me when you have time. Hearing this, Zhuo Junhua looked at her quietly. He seemed to have something to say, but in the end, he lowered his head and closed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Seeing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and asked, "Do you have something to say? We've been together for a long time. What's there that can't be said?" Chapter 2082. Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and looked at him. "You don't want to leave now?" "Yes, I want you to come with me to the Zhuo family and see my grandmother." He paused for a moment, then said, "Her health is not good, and she doesn't have much time left." Fengjiu's eyes flashed, and her gaze fell on his face. "Why do you want to see your grandmother? You have to give me a reason." She had a faint guess in her heart, but she did not expect it to be true. He looked up at her and slowly said, "My grandmother once told me to find out about my grandfather, and the emerald-edged sword is a clue." "What is your grandfather's name?" she asked, her gaze falling on his face, not wanting to miss any expression on his face. "Outsiders know that my grandfather is the ancestor of the Zhuo family, but only my family knows that my grandfather's surname is Chu, and his name is Chu Batian." He stared at her and said the name that had been hidden in his heart for a long time. Hearing this name from his mouth, Fengjiu's heart moved. "That's right, my master is Chu Batian. I can go with you to see your grandmother, but I want to know what happened to your family." Although she did not say it explicitly, she knew that he understood. Zhuo Junhua said, "I don't know much about my grandfather and grandmother, and my grandmother did not tell us in detail. She only told us a small part of it, but you can ask her personally when you see her." Fengjiu pondered. If they were really her master's descendants, then she must go and see this person. Thus she nodded. "All right. Then let's go together. When the old man wakes up, tell him that there's nothing else here, so let's not waste time here." "Yes," Zhuo Junhua replied, paused for a moment, then asked, "Can you tell me about my grandfather? How did you meet him?" He died a long time ago, and I entered the secret cave of the underwater cave by chance, and found the divine consciousness he left behind." She looked at him and said, "The third thing he asked me to do back then was to find his descendants and see if they were doing well. I just never expected that you'd come to the upper continent, while I've been searching for you on the lower continent. I think even he didn't expect that your grandmother would come to the upper continent." Fengjiu looked at him and said, "Many powers in the lower continent know the name Chu Batian. However, he has been dead for many years, and people have gradually forgotten about him. His strength can be said to be one of the strongest in the lower continent. In addition to the ancient divine sword Qingfeng in his hand, he could almost defeat all opponents. However, he was outnumbered. He's nothing compared to the experts of the upper continent, but he's a real man who dares to do things." She smiled and said, "After I accidentally became his disciple, I looked up many things about him when he was young. Although he was strong in the lower continents, he never bullied the weak. If it wasn't for those people who slandered and framed him for the sake of obtaining the azure-edged sword, perhaps he would still be alive now." At this point she sighed softly. Perhaps it was because of this tragedy that caused the annihilation of his Chu clan that he felt guilty in his heart. So he sent the azure-edged sword into the myriad sword tomb when he was heavily injured. Chapter 2083. However, ever since he was old enough to understand things, he knew that he and his father were not of the Zhuo family's bloodline. This was no secret in the Zhuo family, and it was precisely because of this that their position in the Zhuo family was so awkward. The old man who was sleeping soundly turned over and bumped into a rock beside him. He woke up as well. He yawned and stretched his body as he looked at the two people sitting there. He rubbed his eyes and asked, "What are you two doing sitting there?" Fengjiu glanced back and said with a smile, "Chatting. Here." The leader of the mercenary group brought some roasted meat. She threw the remaining piece of meat to him. "Hee, is it the one we met in the forest?" The old man took the meat and ate it. He said vaguely, "This old man is hungry, but there are many opportunities to eat meat here." Most importantly, it's all delivered to me by others. Hearing this, Feng rolled her eyes and said, "Hurry up and eat. I'm about to leave. Are you going to stay here? Or are you leaving too?" Cough cough. The old man choked on the meat. He quickly swallowed the meat in his mouth and looked at Feng. "You're leaving?" He looked at her strangely. "Why didn't a sly little fox like you sneak away when I was sleeping?" The corner of Feng Jiu's mouth twitched as she glanced at him. He was right. She had wanted to sneak away while he was asleep. But who knew that Zhuo Junhua would take her to see his grandmother? If he did not say that, she would have left long ago. Looking at Feng Ix's expression, the old man glared at her. "Don't tell me you really have such thoughts? You want to sneak away when this old man is asleep? Let me tell you, if you dare to leave this old man behind, this old man will chase you all the way to your house. We'll leave the forest tomorrow morning." She suddenly asked, "By the way, can the Aurora teleportation scroll send the three of us out of the forest?" Hearing this, the old man sneered and looked at her sideways. "How many people have you tried to teleport?" "No." She shook her head and said, "It was precisely because he had never tried it that he asked him. Most teleportation scrolls can carry people. This thing that you said is a treasure. Could it only be used by one person at a time?" She looked at him with a strange gaze and asked, "If it could only be one person, then this restriction was a little too much. It couldn't even compare to an ordinary person. That's why I said you were indulging in fantasy." The old man snorted and said, "Once the Aurora transmission scroll is opened, you can teleport to any place above it. What about the other transmission scrolls? If you could even bring someone with you, then this treasure would be a heaven-defying treasure. How could it fall into your hands?" Feng Jiu's mouth twitched when he saw the look of disdain on his face. She knew that this old man wouldn't be able to take out any treasures, but after thinking about it, it was already a rare treasure, even if she was the only one who could use it. At the very least, it would only take a blink of an eye for her to return to the Phoenix dynasty in the lower reaches of the continent. Chapter 2084. Feng Jiu stood up and dusted off her robes. She looked around and walked towards the back of the mountain. The old man hurriedly asked, "Where are you going in the middle of the night?" Feng Jiu turned around and glanced at him. "I'm going to relieve myself. Do you want to come with me?" The old man's face twitched, and he glared at her in embarrassment. He turned back to Zhuo Junhua and said, "Look at her. She doesn't look like a girl at all. She's clearly a little bastard." Zhuo Junhua ignored the old man and looked at Feng Jiu. "Do you need me to keep watch?" "No need." Feng Jiu waved her hand without looking back. Her figure gradually disappeared into the night. Did the little girl take the opportunity to slip away? Han Yuanzi asked worriedly. He looked in the direction Feng Jiu had left and shook his head. He paced back and forth with his hands behind his back, waiting for Feng Jiu to return. Zhuo Junhua saw that Han Yuanzi was worried that she had slipped away and said, "I invited her to the Zhuo family. She agreed, so she won't leave." The old man was stunned. "You invited her to the Zhuo family? What for?" Zhuo Junhua lowered his gaze and remained silent. The old man's gaze shifted and he asked, "Could it be that you're related to that little girl's master?" "Her master should be my grandfather," Zhuo Junhua said. The old man was speechless. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? About 100 meters away from here, which was also the region behind the volcano, Feng Jiu sat down cross-legged at the foot of the mountain. She wanted to see if the two immortal grasses were attracted by the aura of the primal chaos green lotus in her body. She placed her hands on her knees and relaxed. At the same time, she activated the aura of the chaotic green lotus in her body. A wisp of the aura of the chaotic green lotus seeped out and filled the air. Then she quietly looked around and paid attention to her surroundings. There were more than 2 angel grasses. If she released the aura of the chaotic green lotus, would it attract more angel grasses? At this moment, she was looking forward to it and excited. About half an incense stick's worth of time later, her divine sense noticed that 2 stalks of illuminating flame grass were moving towards her. The 2 stalks of angel grass moved from the ground, stopped beside her, and used their leaves to touch her body. Finally, they pulled themselves out of the soil. One of them jumped into her arms, and the other hid in her sleeve. She was stunned for a long time. It was really attracted by the aura of the chaotic green lotus, she muttered to herself in disbelief. What made her even more incredulous was that in the next half an incense stick's worth of time, several more stalks of celestial grass came running over. Some were smaller, some were bigger, and each stalk of celestial grass seemed to have a medicine spirit attached to it. It was as if they had gained sentience, and they all came running towards her. Seeing this scene, she quickly withdrew the primal chaos green lotus's aura and stored the fairy grass in her space. She had a feeling that those people wouldn't be able to find the fairy grass. Even if they did, they would have already come to her place. Chapter 2085. The chaotic azure lotus was so powerful. Why had the old man given it to her all those years ago? Moreover, it had been quiet for so long and nothing else had happened because of it. Could it be that it would continue to be so peaceful? She felt that it was unlikely. The chaotic green lotus in her body had already fused with her. If it could no longer be hidden in the future, then what kind of trouble would it cause? She had no way of knowing all of this, nor could she estimate it. The old man, who was waiting there, saw that Fengjiu had not returned after so long, and could not help but feel worried. Do you think she slipped away? Why hasn't she returned yet? She'll be back soon, Zhuo Junhua said calmly. He was not nervous or worried. She'll be back soon? Tell me, how many times have you said this since just now? The old man stared at him, and asked while pulling his beard. How many times have you asked? How many times have I said it? He said and glanced at the old man. You don't even know how to count. Have you really become old? Hearing this, the old man glared at him. You little rascal. You've been with that little rascal for so long that you've learned bad things. Are you going to bully this old man? What do you mean by that little rascal? A voice suddenly sounded and gave the old man a fright. He patted his chest and turned around with a frightened expression. When he saw Fengjiu, who had come to his side with a smile, he couldn't help but exhale softly. Are you trying to scare this old man to death? Why didn't you make a sound when you came back? This old man thought you were swallowed by a beast. Which beast dared to swallow me? Fengjiu said with a smile. He found a place to sit down and said to Zhuo Junhua, Go and rest for a while. We'll leave when the sun comes up. Rest up first. Zhuo Junhua replied. After glancing at the old man, he went to the place where the old man had been resting. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to rest. You slept for so long. Are you going to keep watch tonight? It's my turn for the second half of the night, Fengjiu said to Han Yuanzi. He did not wait for a reply and yawned and closed his eyes. The old man looked at the two people who had fallen asleep with their eyes closed. He felt a lump in his throat before he could exhale. It was very uncomfortable. Why were they so worrisome? If it were anyone else, who would dare to ask the Mount Tai of the sect to keep watch for them? Only these two dared to treat him like this. They were really too unruly. Looking at the two of them like this, he could not sleep, nor could he sit still. Thus, he walked around with his hands behind his back. The first half of the night passed quickly, and it was considered peaceful. However, when it was the second half of the night, he felt that the atmosphere around him had changed. Although the murderous intent was restrained, he could still feel it. He came to Fengjiu and Zhuo Junhua's side and whispered to them, Wake up, there's movement. Fengjiu woke up when the atmosphere around them became oppressive. With her eyes closed, she used her divine sense to scan the surroundings. She saw that more than 10 teams had gathered together and were surrounding them. She opened her eyes. At the same time, she saw Zhuo Junhua opening his eyes and looking at her. Seeing this, she smiled. Looks like there's an ambush. She stood up and flicked her sleeves. She looked around with a thoughtful gaze. Chapter 2086. The old man said in surprise. He retracted his divine sense and said, More than a dozen groups of people against one mercenary group. This time, even if they have strong mercenaries, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to escape unscathed. No, they're already retreating. She curled her lips into a smile. In the dark night, the mercenaries dressed in mercenary uniforms quietly retreated. They quickly retreated before those people realized that they were retreating. It seemed that their vigilance was not bad. However, among the retreating mercenaries, there was a mercenary who seemed to have received an order and came towards them. His movements were very fast, and without a sound, he arrived in front of them in a short while. Hunyuan, Immortal Lord, our leader asked me to tell you to hurry up and leave. More than a dozen groups of people are surrounding us. If you don't leave now, it will be too late. The old man was stunned for a moment, then nodded. Oh, we know. You guys go first. Take care, the mercenary said, and quickly caught up with their mercenary group. When her divine sense swept over the mercenaries, she suddenly saw a familiar figure. She was slightly surprised and a little stunned, then she chuckled. I didn't expect to see him here. It's a pity that I only saw him now. The familiar figure in the mercenary uniform was her brother, Guan Shilin. Thinking of him, she couldn't help but smile, and the smile on her face widened. The more Hunyuan, Immortal Lord, and Zhuojun saw her standing there smiling, the more confused they were. Zhuojun didn't ask, because he knew the old man would definitely ask curiously. Sure enough, when he turned his gaze to the old man, he heard the old man's voice. What are you smiling about? Why are you smiling so strangely? Fengjiu released her divine sense, and saw that her brother had retreated with the mercenaries. A large group of people quietly disappeared into the night. She then retracted her gaze and smiled. Nothing. As she spoke, she crossed her arms and rubbed her hands. She rotated her waist and her eyes were filled with a sly smile. The moonlight tonight is really good. Since we can't sleep, let's loosen up. Loosen my muscles. The old man glanced at her and said, You're not a warm-hearted person. What are you planning? What do you mean by not being a warm-hearted person? Fengjiu snorted and said, They gave us barbecued meat to eat. No matter what, we should help them, right? Why would you be so kind? I don't believe it. As the old man spoke, he gestured towards the direction that the mercenary left and asked, Is there someone you know in there? Yeah, she replied with a smile, and did not say anything else. Instead, she looked ahead and listened to the sounds coming from there. Ran away. Why is there no one here? Why did he run away? Could it be that someone leaked the information? How is it possible for someone to leak the information? We don't have any relationship with that mercenary group. They must have sensed something and ran away. The fire is still here, and they haven't had time to clean up this place. They shouldn't have run far. Chase after them. The murderous aura that was originally restrained completely diffused from their bodies at this moment. The footsteps that were originally light, because they were afraid of being discovered, also became disorderly at this moment. Chapter 2087. However, just as the dozen or so teams were about to give chase, they suddenly saw three figures standing in front of them. Everyone was stunned when they saw the old man and the two young men, especially those who recognized Hunyuan Zi. At this moment, hesitation appeared on their faces. The other party was Master Hunyuan. If they were to fight him, they were afraid that, thinking of that very likely outcome, the leaders of a few teams quietly gestured for their teams to retreat and quickly retreat. Seeing the teams retreat, the others were stunned. One of the teams asked in a daze, Why are they running? Didn't we agree to work together? There are only 3 people, and they're already scared off? After saying this, that person came to a realization. That's not right. Why are they running when there are only 3 people? Since they ran when they saw the 3 of them, could it be that the 3 of them are all powerful figures? The leaders of the remaining 9 teams were still staring at the 3 people in front of them, sizing them up. Unfortunately, even with their strength, they couldn't figure out the other party's strength. They couldn't help but hesitate when they wanted to attack. Who are the 3 of you? Why are you blocking our way? One of them shouted. At the same time, he attacked the green-robed youth with his aura. He wanted to use his aura to test the other party's strength. But who knew that? Why do you care who we are? If you know what's good for you, leave all your valuables behind. Otherwise, Fengjiu snorted coldly. Her words made the old man and Zhuo Junyue's lips twitch involuntarily. So this was her plan all along? Besides helping the group of mercenaries to stop these people, he also wanted to plunder all the treasures on these people? Ruthless. Too ruthless. She was a bandit. It didn't matter if she was a bandit, but how could she drag them, two good citizens, down with her? Girl, this old man is still the sex Mount Tai. Say, if news of what happened tonight spreads, won't my reputation be ruined? Master Hunyuan sighed with a worried expression. Fengjiu glanced at him and said, It's not like you haven't done this before. The first time is unfamiliar, the second time is familiar. What's there to be conflicted about? Besides, if you don't want the news to spread, it's simple. Just kill them all, and naturally the news won't spread. If it really doesn't work and the news gets out, then they can only praise you. Her voice paused, and she raised her chin towards the people in front of her, indicating, Look, these people are all ferocious. How can they be good people? You robbed them because you robbed too little. The old man's face twitched as he muttered, This old man knew that following you would definitely lead me astray. It's such a pity that my grand sect Mount Tai would one day be reduced to being a bandit. What are you mumbling about? If you really don't want to do it, that's fine too. Go to the side, and when the time comes, you won't get a single thing from us. As Fengjiu spoke, he looked at the people in front of him and raised his voice. Hurry up and hand over everything you have on you. Otherwise, don't even think about escaping today. Hearing this, those people cursed angrily. You brat, do you want to die? Do you know who your grandfather is? You. Chapter 2088. Roar. A cry of alarm rang out, followed by the roar of the sacred beast. Following the roar of the cloud-swallowing beast, a powerful pressure that could be seen with the naked eye spread out in the air. This pressure enveloped the entire area, causing everyone's bodies to stiffen as they felt a chill run down their spines. In that instant, the gigantic devouring cloud beast pounced forward, like a fierce tiger pouncing on its prey, pressing down on the young man, who was cursing Fengjiu under its claws. Under the pressure of its claws, the sound of bones breaking could be heard, accompanied by the man's scream. No! Save me! Save me! As the cry for help fell, swallowing cloud bit off that person's neck and swung it, throwing the bloody corpse in front of everyone. That neck looked like it was on the verge of breaking out, and that person's eyes were wide open in shock, causing everyone to break out in cold sweat. They could not help but take a step back, their faces filled with fear as they stared at the youth and the sacred beast that was elegantly wiping the blood from the corner of its mouth. What the hell? They actually saw the word elegance on a bloodthirsty sacred beast? However, that sacred beast was just squatting there, lazily wiping its mouth with its front paw. It even stuck out its tongue, which somehow made them think of elegance. I'm going to die of boredom. Old White also ran out from Fengjiu's space with a whoosh, flying over everyone's heads in the form of a white dragon, blocking everyone's back, laughing excitedly. Master, are we going to take care of them? Moo mutated beast? Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, as they looked at the snow-white dragon, and the strange horn on its head. Their faces turned pale with a swoosh, as they turned to look at the young man in green with shock in their eyes. What was the background of this young man? It was fine to have a sacred beast, but how could there be such a rare mutated beast? Not only were the others shocked, even the old man and Zhuojunue were shocked by Fengjiu's contracted beasts. They knew about the sacred beast, but where did this mutated white dragon come from? How could he have two such rare contracted beasts? More importantly, shouldn't normal people only be able to contract one beast? Why did she have two? If they knew that Fengjiu had more than two contracted beasts, they would be even more surprised. Fengjiu glanced at Lao Bai, and then said to the frightened people, What do you think? Are you going to obediently hand it over? Or do you want us to kill you and then take your things? Think about it carefully. Don't regret it too late. Hearing this, the old man and Zhuojunue stood quietly behind her. From the looks of it, there was no need for them to do anything. She could handle it herself. The old man stood behind Fengjiu and looked at her strangely. Sure enough, there were traces to be found. From the first time he met her, she had directly swindled his treasures and left him behind. This person had done this kind of thing more than once or twice. Looking at how familiar she was with this, she must have done this kind of thing no less than 100 times. Thinking of this, he stroked his beard. Why did he feel that she was simple and honest that day? He had really been deceived by her pure appearance. Chapter 2089. But if they didn't hand it over, they might not even be able to leave this place alive. If we give you our things, you'll let us go? One of them frowned and asked, his gaze landing on Fengjiu. Of course, I'm not a bloodthirsty demon. Although you guys aren't good people, at least you don't have to die. Leave your things and go. Fengjiu smiled and stared at them. Hearing this, those people looked at each other, and one of them asked worriedly, what if we leave our things behind and you attack us again? Fengjiu raised his voice, his face full of astonishment. How could that be? How could I do something so immoral? You guys have to have faith in my character. Hearing this, Han Yuanzi and Zhuo Junyue's mouths twitched. Character? Alright. They felt that they didn't see any character in her, and the credibility of her words wasn't high. This was their experience in cutting skin. Those people didn't think so much, but they didn't have any other choice. If it was just the three of them, it would be one thing. Even if they went all out, some of them might still be able to leave alive. However, in addition to their unfathomable strength, there were also two powerful contracted beasts here. If they fought, they didn't have the confidence to escape unscathed, but if they could keep their lives by handing over their things, even if they were unwilling, it was still better than losing their lives. At this moment, looking at the people who quickly retreated when they saw these three people, they cursed in their hearts. Could it be that those people already knew that these three people weren't to be trifled with? So they quickly retreated? Damn it! At least they said that they would work together. If they wanted to retreat, they should have warned them. Now, even if they wanted to retreat, they had nowhere to go. They could only obediently hand over their things. After some hesitation, they took off their things and retreated step by step. However, at this moment, the voice of the green-robed youth sounded again. All of you better be obedient. Otherwise, I'll let my sacred beast strip off your clothes. At that time, it'll be ugly. Hearing this, those who still had some things on them froze. Although the youth didn't say who he was talking to, they inexplicably felt guilty, as if those words were directed at them. In the end, they could only resist the urge to curse and put down their things on the ground. They raised their hands and retreated step by step. This time, I really don't have anything. Han Yuanzi and Zhuo Junyue were already indifferent to Fengjiu's words. They looked at the things on the ground, and then looked at Fengjiu. Just to speak, they saw her turn to look at Zhuo Junyue. I'll have to trouble you to keep those things. Okay. Zhuo Junyue responded, and went forward to pick up the things on the ground. He watched as those people fled after retreating to a safe distance, then turned back to look at Fengjiu. Why are you looking at me? I'm a man of my word. Since I said I'd let them go, I'll naturally let them go. My integrity is guaranteed. Fengjiu said with a smile. She glanced at Tun Yun and Lao Bai. You two go into the space. Hearing her words, Zhuo Junyue couldn't find anything to say. He just picked up the things and handed them to her. Chapter 2090. Here are the items, Zhuo Junyue said and gestured for her to take the items. Fengjiu looked at the items in his hand and put them away with a smile. She sighed softly. I've gained quite a lot from entering the volcano forest. I knew I should come out more often. Look, I've earned a lot. Lao Bai stroked his beard and glanced at her. What do you mean by earning a lot? You're the one who robbed us. He really couldn't tell that this little girl was so capable in this line of work. He really didn't know what this little girl used to do. She put the items away and planned to organize them later. She would keep the useful items and sell the useless ones. Finally, she looked at the two of them. Let's go. It's good that we're out of the forest now. Let's go out on our swords. It should save us a lot of time. Are we really going to the Zhuo family? The old man looked at her and asked. Yes, let's go to the Zhuo family. She nodded and took the rainbow feather from her waist and threw it into the air. The beautiful feather changed and became bigger with a whoosh. It floated lightly in the air. This treasure is not bad. The old man was surprised. He looked at the beautiful rainbow feather and stroked his beard, asking, This is the rainbow glaze feather, right? I didn't expect a little girl like you to have so many treasures on you. You didn't rob this too, did you? Fengjiu tapped her toes and leaped onto the feather. She sat down cross-legged and said, "Are you going or not? If not, I'll go." As soon as she finished speaking, she took the lead and flew high into the air. After passing through the air pressure, she flew even higher and headed out of the forest. "Wait for us," the old man shouted, and threw out his flying device to chase after her. Zhuo Junhua summoned his flying sword and followed behind the two of them. However, when they passed through the air pressure, their bodies fell slightly. In the volcanic forest area, the heat in the air formed a pressure, especially in mid-air. The pressure was especially obvious. Ordinary cultivators couldn't fly on their swords under this pressure. Therefore, most of the people who came to the volcanic forest to train were on foot. Another thing was, if they directly flew through the forest on their swords, it wouldn't be considered training. Among them, only those with real strength could withstand the pressure in the air. However, just like Feng Jiayu and the others, they had to step on the aircraft and fly up into the air. They had to break through the air pressure to fly up to a high altitude before they could truly fly on the aircraft. Behind him, Zhuo Junhua flew with the wind on his flying sword. His gaze was fixed on the green-robed youth who was sitting on the feather. His sleeves were fluttering, and his black hair was fluttering. His hands were casually propped up on the feather behind him, and he looked at ease and contented. He couldn't help but think, she's really a strange person. The more I interact with her these days, the more I feel that she's unfathomable. Whether it's her way of doing things or her strength, she's always exceeded my expectations. The first time they met, she cured his poison, took the teleportation scroll from the old man, and played a trick on the old man. He was so angry that he stomped his feet. When they met again, he heard how she used a trick to save those people. When she dealt with the fiendish cultivators, she was ruthless and merciless. Her clean methods and strength were shocking. Later, they found out that the youth in front of them was actually a woman. Chapter 2091. Thinking of her forceful methods, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile. She was probably the only one who could do such a thing. He really didn't know that when his grandfather took her in as a disciple. Did he know that she had such a personality? Thinking of his grandfather, he had an indescribable feeling in his heart. On one hand, he felt that there was finally news about the matter that his grandmother wanted him to inquire about. On the other hand, he felt that it was a pity that he could only learn about his grandfather from her. He knew that in his father's heart, this matter had always been on his mind. If his father found out about this, what would he do? At the same time, in a corner of the lobby on the first floor of the Heavenly Pill building in 100 River City, Lung Hua, don't you feel that there's something wrong with Little Fool recently? Du Fan came to Lung Hua's side and asked, gesturing for him to look at the busy figure in front of him. What's wrong? Lung Hua looked at the account book in his hand and asked without raising his head. Everything's wrong. Du Fan took the account book away from his hand and tucked it under his arm, saying, a few days ago, she often went to your side and often called you Big Brother Lung Hua, Big Brother Lung Hua. But now it's like she's treating you like you're transparent. Don't you think it's strange? Also, have you noticed? Why do I feel like she's lost a lot of weight recently? And her face has been pale recently. Could it be that I really went too far last time, and she's sick from holding it in? At this point, Du Fan couldn't help but feel a little worried. Little fool, this girl was quite likable. She didn't have any ulterior motives, and was also very straightforward. Especially as the daughter of a family, she didn't put on any airs and treated people very sincerely. Although she was smiling every day, he always felt that her smile was a little gloomy. Hearing this, Lung Hua looked at the girl who was busy in front of him. He saw that she had indeed lost a lot of weight recently. Her originally round face was now slimmed down to a sharp chin. However, her face seemed to be a little pale, and she did not look as happy as before. I'll talk to her later, Lung Hua said. And then when she wants to go back, tell her to go to the backyard. I'll go too. I think I might have said too much last time. Du Fan sighed and felt a little guilty. She was a good girl. If she really took things too hard because of his words, then it would be strange if his master didn't skin him alive when he returned. However, as the two of them were talking, they suddenly heard a cry of surprise coming from the front. "Waiter, waiter, what happened to you?" The two of them looked towards the front and saw that the busy waiter had suddenly fainted. Fortunately, there was a medicinal maid beside him supporting him, so that he didn't fall to the ground. Seeing this, the two of them quickly went forward. Look, look. I said that there must be something wrong with her." Just as I was saying that, something really did happen. As Du Fan spoke, he anxiously ordered one of the maidservants. "Go, tell Fan Lin to go to the backyard." At this time, Lung Hua had already gone forward to carry the girl, and quickly walked to the backyard. Du Fan followed beside him. Fan Lin, who was on the second floor, also came to the backyard on the first floor after hearing the maidservant's words. As soon as he entered the backyard, he was pulled inside by Du Fan. Come, come, quickly go and see how that waiter is doing. She suddenly fainted in front of us and her face is frighteningly pale. Before the master left, he told us to take good care of her. If he came back and saw her like this, it would be strange if he didn't beat us. Chapter 2092. Let's take a look at her first. We'll talk after that. Du Fan dragged him into the room and came to the bedside. He pointed at the unconscious girl on the bed and said, "Quick, quick, let's take a look at her." Fan Lin sat down on the chair beside the bed unhurriedly and reached out to check her pulse. After a while, he withdrew his hand and said to the two, "What's wrong with her? She's a rich young lady. How did she become malnourished?" What? Du Fan was stunned. Lung Hua beside him asked, "How is she? Why did she faint?" "She probably didn't eat well. In addition, she used too much energy and has some depression in her heart. It's not a big problem. As long as we give her something to eat when she wakes up, her body will slowly recover." As Fan Lin spoke, he stood up and looked at the two of them. He asked strangely, "What kind of work did you give her? How did you make her work too much and use up too much energy? Don't tell me you took advantage of the absence of the master to bully her?" "How could that be?" Du Fan quickly said, "Actually, it's like this." He briefly told Fan Lin what happened that day. After hearing Du Fan's words, Fan Lin nodded in realization. "I see. No wonder she has depression in her heart." He smiled and stepped forward to pat Lung Hua's shoulder. "Watch over her for the next 2 days. Give her some medicine. I'll get someone to boil some medicine for her to drink." "Didn't you say she was fine? Why does she need to take medicine?" Du Fan couldn't help but ask. "Open some qi to disperse the depression. The rest will depend on you guys to open her." As Fan Lin spoke, he walked out with large strides. "You stay here and watch over her. I'll get someone to boil some ginseng soup and send it over," Lung Hua said to Du Fan. He was about to walk out when Du Fan grabbed his hand. "Don't. You stay here. I'll take care of this." As Du Fan spoke, he hurriedly walked out without waiting for him to react. However, when he reached the door, he paused and turned back to ask, "Oh right, Xiao'er fainted. Should we get someone to inform her family?" Hearing this, Lung Hua looked at Xiao'er, who was still unconscious, and said gently, "Let's not talk about it for now. We'll talk about it when she wakes up, lest her father gets worried." "All right, then I'll be going," he said before walking away. Lung Hua was keeping watch in the room. Seeing that the person on the bed hadn't woken up yet, he sat beside him and watched quietly. The door creaked open and Lung Hua, dressed in black, walked in. "Sister." Lung Hua stood up and greeted her. "How is she?" Lung Shuang looked at the waiter on the bed and asked. "She said she didn't eat properly and fainted from hunger. Also she's depressed," Lung Hua said. Hearing this, Lung Shuang looked at Lung Hua and said, "When she wakes up, talk to her. Let her rest well for the next few days and recover her body." "Okay, I got it," Lung Hua said. Seeing his sister turn and walk out, he got up and walked her out. After returning to the room and sitting by the bed for a while, Xiao'er slowly woke up. Seeing that she was awake, Lung Hua smiled gently. "You're awake." When he saw that she was about to get up, he motioned to her. Just lie down. I'll talk to you for a while. Brother Leng Hua, what's wrong with me? Xiao Er pulled at the quilt. She was a little nervous and restrained. Leng Hua smiled gently. Have you not eaten properly recently? Chapter 2093. Seeing this, Leng Hua looked at her and asked gently, Xiao, have you been unhappy recently because you heard what Du Fan said to me? No. She quickly shook her head, afraid that he would misunderstand. Actually, you don't have to be like this. You were originally very good. You don't have to care too much about what others think. Xiao Er narrowed her eyes. She pulled the blanket and didn't speak. She didn't dare to look up at him. Leng Hua didn't say anything else. He just looked at her and asked with a smile. Do you want to know how we followed Master back then? She looked at him in shock. Can I tell you? There's nothing that can't be said. Everyone in the Phoenix Guards knows. However, they only know the general idea and don't know the details. He smiled and said gently, Master is someone who isn't afraid of what the world thinks, and isn't bound by the world. You don't know, back then. He sat by the bed, and told her about what happened back then with a gentle voice, and a smile on his face. Xiao Er listened attentively. Her eyes were sometimes filled with amazement, and sometimes looked at Leng Hua in disbelief. She looked at the undisguised respect and conviction in his eyes when he talked about his master. She was mesmerized by the light and expression in his eyes. She never knew that they had such a past. She didn't even know that such a thing had happened to them in the past, that it was like this back then. Not only did Master change the fate of my brother and sister, she also taught us how to behave and deal with things. We always believed that Master's taste was unique. Someone who could be chosen by her must be special. At this point, he smiled gently and his gentle gaze fell on her face. Not only did Master say that you were very good, but after interacting with you, we all know that you are indeed very good. You really are very good like this. You don't have to change anything. Just follow your heart. Don't give yourself too much pressure. Hearing him say so much, Xiao Er knew that he was trying to enlighten her. She looked at him with some guilt and said softly, Brother Leng Hua, I'm sorry for making you worry. Hearing this, he smiled and asked slowly, Your body is a little weak now. I want you to rest at home for a few days to recover. Do you think that's okay? Then can I come again in the future? She asked nervously. Of course. He smiled and reached out to stroke her head, saying, You should quickly recover before coming over to help. Seeing him touch her head like a child, she was a little shy and a little happy. She nodded. Well, I will take care of my body as soon as possible. I will eat well when I go back. That's good. Leng Hua nodded. At this moment he heard the door open. He turned around and saw Du Fan carrying something in. You're awake. Du Fan looked at the waiter on the bed and said with a smile, It's good that you're awake. The food is ready. Come. I'll help you sit up. Leng Hua said, reaching out to help her up. Thank you. She thanked him softly. Perhaps it was because her state of mind had changed, but her appetite had also improved. Smelling the fragrance, she couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Seeing this, Du Fan and Leng Hua looked at each other and smiled. They brought the things to the small square table beside the bed. Chapter 2094. Hearing this, the waiter smiled sweetly and looked at Leng Hua. Thank you, Brother Leng Hua. Thank you, Brother Du. All right. Hurry up and eat. Du Fan said with a smile. Seeing her happy smile, he said to the two of them, I'll go to the front and take a look first. As he spoke, he left first. While the waiter wasn't paying attention, he made a fierce gesture at Leng Hua. Although Fengjie wasn't here at the Heavenly Pill Dispensary, with the two stewards, Leng Hua and Du Fan, as well as the Phoenix Guards and some other people in the dispensary, everything went smoothly and no one caused any trouble. Although the elixirs and medicines in the dispensary weren't cheap, there were still many people who came to buy medicine every day. And on this evening, when the Heavenly Pill Dispensary was about to close, a person came to seek medical treatment. And the person who brought this person to seek medical treatment was someone they didn't expect, Morong Yixian. A man in luxurious clothes came with Morong Yixian, And behind the man in luxurious clothes were 4 cultivators with decent cultivation. Is your master here? On the first floor of the heavenly pill dispensary, Morong Yixian looked at Leng Hua and asked. Leng Hua's gaze swept past the man in luxurious clothes beside Morong Yixian, and then fell on Morong Yixian. Instead of answering, he asked, Is there something you need from my master? Although Leng Hua's attitude was gentle, his behavior was distant and indifferent, so Morong Yixian directly introduced the man in luxurious clothes beside him. This is a relative of Immortal Mu Xian from the Huaxian sect. He's here to seek medical treatment. My master isn't here, Leng Hua said, and made an inviting gesture to them. Please, we're just about to close the shop and rest. Seeing this, the man in luxurious clothes frowned slightly, and there was a trace of displeasure on his handsome face. If it weren't for Morong Yixian's instructions earlier, he would have definitely taught this impudent young man a lesson. When he heard Leng Hua's words, Morong Yixian was stunned. He then asked, Then did she say when she would return? At this moment, he didn't think that Leng Hua was being perfunctory, because he knew that Fengjiu wasn't the kind of person who would stay in one place forever. Thinking about it, he must have something to do. Young Master Morong must be joking. As subordinates, how would we know when the master will return? Leng Hua said warmly. Looking at Morong Yixian in front of him, he said, You'd better look for another doctor. I don't want to delay the treatment of my illness. How dare you? The man in luxurious clothes bellowed as he stared sharply at Leng Hua. You're just a mere steward, yet you're so arrogant. Ziheng. Morong Yixian furrowed his brows slightly and looked at the finely dressed man beside him. He was a little displeased with his sudden shout. No one knew better than him how protective Fengjiu was of his own people. How could the people by her side be berated by others? What's more, this Leng Hua was someone she regarded highly and had been by her side for many years. Naturally, he wasn't someone an ordinary person could compare to. Leng Hua acted as if he didn't see this scene. He still had a gentle smile on his face as he looked at Morong Yixian. Young Master Morong, please. Seeing this, Morong Yixian sighed inwardly and said, Then we'll come back another day. Once he finished speaking, he turned around and left. When the finely dressed man saw this, he frowned and swept a glance at Leng Hua with a sullen face. He snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves and left. Chapter 2095. Du Fan snorted and said, Does this Morong Yixian have nothing better to do? Why did he bring this kind of person to our place? That finely dressed man is sick. Fan Lin walked out with light steps as he spoke slowly. He's definitely sick. There's something wrong with his head. Luo Yu crossed his arms and leaned against the counter. Why doesn't he take a look at himself? He brought a few people and wanted to throw a tantrum here. Humph. If it weren't for you holding me back just now, I definitely would have come out and taught him a lesson. Fan Lin smiled. He really is sick, and it's a fatal illness. There was a smile in his eyes as he said, But this person's luck isn't too good. He came at the wrong time and didn't meet Master. Speaking of which, even if Master was here, whether or not he would be willing to help is another matter. There's no need to pay attention to it. We just need to complete the task Master gave us. Leng Hua said warmly. Everyone nodded. Du Fan then said, Speaking of which, Master has been gone for a few days. We don't know when he'll be back. We don't know if Master has met that bastard Han Rong yet. Even if he escaped this time, he won't be able to escape next time. Do you think he can still live after being targeted by Master? As Luo Yu spoke, he waved his hand at them and said, I'm going back to rest. If there's anything, call me. You guys go rest. I'm going back to the manor to take a look. Leng Hua said to everyone. After tidying up the matters in the building, he left through the back door and headed towards the Feng Manor. On the other side, the finely dressed man walking on the main street looked at Morong Yixian and said, You said that being courteous to the ghost doctor is one thing, but is there a need to be so courteous to a mere steward? Look at that brat's attitude. It really makes people angry. Morong Yixian's brow furrowed when he heard this. He turned his head slightly and glanced at the finely dressed man. That's Fengjiu's person. Even if he's just a steward, he's still someone she values. Didn't I say it already? Since you want to seek medical treatment, you have to lower your attitude. If you continue to act like before, then I'll go back to the sect and apologize to Immortal Mu Xian. You can go and seek medical treatment by yourself. You. He stared at him, his face dark. Morong Yishuan looked at him coldly. I've already said that even if I brought you here, I might not be able to get her to treat you. If it wasn't for Immortal Mu Xian's repeated requests, I wouldn't have done such a thankless task. The luxuriously dressed man was furious, but he didn't express it. He forcefully suppressed it. All right, I understand. In his heart he was thinking. He really didn't believe that he couldn't get the ghost doctor to treat him. At noon the next day, the man in luxurious clothes brought the 4 cultivators behind him to the Heavenly Pill building again. However, he did not come with Morong Yishuan today. After entering the Heavenly Pill building, he began to look around from the first floor. When he saw that the pills, which were rare even in their clan, were being sold at a high price on the first floor, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He never thought that this Heavenly Pill building would really be like what the outside said. The pills that were not available in other places were all available here. It was said that the pills on the second floor were even more precious and of higher quality. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but be moved. After looking around the first floor, he wanted to go up to the second floor to take a look. However, he didn't know that going up to the second floor required registration. Moreover, the people following him couldn't follow him up. Chapter 2096. Du Fan glanced at her and said, "There won't be any accidents in our building. You can't bring any attendants when you go upstairs. This is the rule." He pointed at the words hanging on the wall with the building's rules. "What if I insist?" the finely dressed man asked in disbelief. "You can choose to leave. Otherwise, we can send you out of the Heavenly Pill building." Du Fan gently fanned himself with the folding fan in his hand. He looked at the finely dressed man in front of him and said with a smile, "If you have the guts, you can try." He wouldn't be as gentle as Leng Hua. If this person dared to behave atrociously here, he wouldn't care if he was a relative of the Immortal Mu Xian. If he angered him, he wouldn't give him a good time. The finely dressed man's face turned ugly when he heard this. He still wanted to seek medical treatment here. If he really fought, he didn't want to see the doctor anymore. He suppressed his anger and turned to leave with a flick of his sleeve. Pfft! Seeing him turn and leave, Du Fan sneered. He still sat there leisurely. In the next 2 days, that person didn't come again. Morong Yishuan didn't come either. It seemed to be leisurely and calm. Seeing that there was nothing to do, Du Fan came to Leng Hua's side and asked, "Xiao, has been home for 2 or 3 days, right? Didn't you go to see how she's been these 2 days?" Hearing this, Leng Hua was slightly surprised. "You want to see her?" "What do you mean I want to see her? I'm not going. You should be the one to go. The little girl fell ill because of you. She's been home for a few days. It's more reasonable for you to visit her," Du Fan said with a smile, holding the folding fan in his hand. Leng Hua couldn't help but smile. "So it wasn't those people who hurt her?" Du Fan coughed lightly and said, "Aren't we free now? Anyway, there's nothing to do. I'll watch over here. She's also here to help. Since the master isn't here, it's better for you to go and see her." "It's not convenient for me to go." Leng Hua shook his head and said with a smile, "Xiao is a girl. How can I visit her? It's not good for her. Patriarch Yang can be considered familiar with us. Last time, you helped him out by selling him a pill. He has always remembered this favor of yours. I think it's good that you're there. Maybe he's having a good time," Du Fan joked. Hearing this, Leng Hua paused and thought for a moment, then said, "If you really want to visit her, why don't you let my sister go? After all, both of them are women, so no one will gossip about them." "Poochie! Ha 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 ha." Du Fan couldn't help but laugh. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but overflow. He gently waved the fan in his hand and cast a sidelong glance at Du Fan. "Let your sister go. What's your sister's name?" Leng Shuang, cold as ice. "Let your sister visit the patient expressionlessly? Don't you think it's easy for others to misunderstand? My sister is a very nice person." Hearing him say that his sister was too cold, he couldn't help but refute. Yes, she's very nice. We all know that your sister is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. But others don't know. Besides, your sister doesn't treat people as gently as you do. With her cold and taciturn personality, what do you think she would do if she went to the Yang family? He asked with a teasing smile on his face. Chapter 2097. Oh, Leng Hua is going to visit the second young lady. Fan Lin walked out of nowhere and looked at him with a smile. I didn't say I was going. He shook his head helplessly and smiled. These people really had nothing to do, and were just making fun of him. I'm not busy these 2 days. Since you have nothing to do, you can make a trip to the Yang family to see little second Mississippi. Alright, I've also made some pills for her. You can send them to her while you're at it. Let her take them once a day for 3 days. As he spoke, Fan Lin took out a bottle of medicine from his sleeve and handed it to Leng Hua. Seeing this, Leng Hua smiled, took it and said, All right, I'll go then. He took the bottle and said to them, You guys keep an eye on this place. I'll be back in a while. All right, go ahead. Du Fan waved his fan and said with a smile. He watched Leng Hua leave and then said with a smile, Actually, I think the second young lady is quite good. She's not bad. Fan Lin nodded. Luo Yu walked out and glanced at the two of them. Don't worry about it. Leng Hua is younger than the two of you. I don't see you guys in a hurry to get married. No hurry. No hurry. Du Fan and Fan Lin said at the same time. Then they looked at each other and smiled. They turned around and went about their own business. Not in a hurry. He snorted softly and touched his face. He muttered softly, You guys aren't in a hurry, but I'm in a hurry. Why don't any girls like me? After leaving the Heavenly Pill building, Leng Hua walked on the street and headed in the direction of the Yang family. He walked at a leisurely pace and looked at the bustling streets from time to time. When he passed by a pastry shop, he remembered that girls usually like to eat pastries. So he went into the pastry shop and bought a few boxes of pastries as a gift for visiting people. A man in luxurious clothes in a restaurant inadvertently glanced around and caught a glimpse of a figure on the street. His eyes flashed slightly. Was it the steward of the Heavenly Pill building? She looked behind him and saw that he was alone without anyone accompanying him. She couldn't help but reveal a smile that wasn't a smile. After walking for a while, Leng Hua knew that someone was following him even though he didn't look back. His pace was neither fast nor slow. He walked at the same pace as before and didn't deliberately speed up. When he came to a turn, he stopped and turned around. Who's there? Come out. Seeing that the youth had discovered them, the man in luxurious clothes was slightly surprised. He walked out and looked at the youth. He asked in confusion, Aren't you an ordinary person who can't cultivate? How did he discover that we were following him? Leng Hua looked at the man in luxurious clothes, his face still as gentle as before. Why are you following me? I would like to invite Steward Leng to have a cup of tea. I wonder if you would do me the honor? The man in luxurious clothes said casually as he stared at the gentle youth. 2. What kind of ability did this youth, who didn't have any spiritual aura, have? Hearing the man in luxurious clothes' words, Leng Hua smiled warmly and said, You're following me today. I'm sure young Master Morong doesn't know. He doesn't know, but so what? The man raised his eyebrows and looked at him. Chapter 2098. Is that so? The man in luxurious clothes said disapprovingly. He looked at Leng Hua and said, Manager Leng might not know who I am. Leng Hua smiled. Didn't young Master Morong say that you are a relative of Immortal Mu Xan from the Huaxian sect? I am the son of the first wife of the Yin family, and Immortal Mu Xan from the Huaxian sect is my aunt. He raised his chin slightly and spoke with an unconcealable arrogance on his face. So that's how it is. Excuse me for not recognizing you. Leng Hua nodded. Now, I would like to invite Manager Leng to a restaurant for a meal. Will Manager Leng give me the honor? He asked with an arrogant tone. As if he was certain Leng Hua would agree. Leng Hua gently shook his head. I'm really sorry. I have something to do, so I'll take my leave. He cupped his hands and prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, under the signal of the man in luxurious clothes, A cultivator appeared in front of him and blocked his path. Seeing this, he stopped in surprise and looked at the man in luxurious clothes. "What are you doing?" "Naturally, I'm inviting Manager Lung for a drink." The man in luxurious clothes gestured, and the cultivator rushed forward and reached out to grab Lung Hua's shoulder. Seeing this scene, Lung Hua's expression didn't change. He only took a deep look at the man in luxurious clothes and dodged to the side. When he dodged the man's attack, he raised his hand to grab the man's hand and twisted it behind his back. Crack! Hiss! The sound of bones breaking echoed in the alley, followed by a gasp of pain. Not only was the cultivator whose hand was twisted by Lung Hua in disbelief, but even the man in luxurious clothes and the three people behind him were stunned and shocked. He clearly didn't have any spirit power fluctuations. So how? A thought flashed through the man's mind and he exclaimed, "You've learned a cultivation method to hide your aura? That's why you've hidden your aura in cultivation? What kind of cultivation method could hide one's strength and cultivation so perfectly? And he didn't reveal any spirit power aura? This person was just a manager, right? How could there be such a cultivation technique? Could it be that it was taught by the ghost doctor?" Lung Hua didn't pay attention to them. Instead, he broke the cultivator's arm and pushed him back to his side. At the same time, his gentle voice rang out. "Sir, you said that you are from the direct line of descent. However, judging from your temperament and behavior, you are somewhat lacking. You don't have the demeanor of a direct descendant at all." He ignored the other party's angry expression and said meaningfully, "Sometimes one of your decisions will not only harm you, but also your family. Since you were brought here by young Master Morong, I think you should think twice before you act. If you really can't do it, you can ask young Master Morong to avoid bringing trouble to your family." "You're threatening me." The man in luxurious clothes stared at him. There was a fire burning in his heart. His emotions fluctuated so much that the hidden illness in his body flared up. His face suddenly turned pale, and his body began to twitch. He clenched his teeth tightly. Lung Hua watched, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. This was because he saw that the fingernails of the man in luxurious clothes suddenly grew longer. They were black and purple, like those of a ghost. Not only that, but his face also seemed to have changed. Chapter 2099. Not good. Master's illness has acted up. Quick! Quick! Chain! Those people's faces were filled with panic. Some of them took out black iron chains from their cosmos bags, while others held him tightly and tied him up in a few moves. In the end, they even put a sack over him and carried him away. Lung Hua stood there in a daze and only regained his senses after a long while. Seeing that he had been forgotten, he shook his head and walked towards the Yang family. Those cultivators carried him back to the courtyard where they were staying. One of them quickly rushed towards the small courtyard where Morong Yixien was. Master Morong, it's not good. Master's illness has acted up." Morong Yixien, who was cultivating cross-legged in his room, opened his eyes and frowned when he heard the voice. "Illness?" He got off the bed and walked outside. He saw that one of the cultivators who had been following Yin Ziheng was about to rush into his room. So he asked, "Where's your master?" "We sent him back to his room. However, master's condition seems to be a little serious this time." That cultivator said, "Bring me there to take a look," Morong Yixien said and walked outside. When he arrived outside the room in another small courtyard, he heard a roar that sounded like a ferocious beast, and the cultivator's cries of surprise. He pushed open the door and walked in. When he saw the scene inside, he couldn't help but be stunned. He saw that Yin Ziheng's muscles were bulging, and the luxurious clothes on his body had already burst open, revealing his strange dark purple skin. Looking up, the color from his neck to his face was also dark purple. Two sharp fangs grew out of his mouth, and his eyes were grayish-white, with only a little black in the middle. It looked very strange. He opened his mouth, and the roar from his mouth was like that of a wild beast. His strength seemed to have increased as well. Even with the black iron chains and the cultivators holding him down, he was still able to push them away. Seeing this scene, he came back to his senses and asked, Didn't your master ask you to bring the suppressive medicine with you? Yes, we did, but young master has finished all of them. The rest are with second master. Second master said that he was going to the alchemist's guild this morning and hasn't returned yet. The rest of the herbs are with him. A cultivator said anxiously. Then press him down. Don't let him break free. Also, one of you, go and find second master Een. As he instructed, he frowned as he watched this scene. Suddenly, he saw that the cultivator holding down Een Zihang was only using one hand, while the other hand was hanging unnaturally. He asked, "Where did you guys go first? How did he get sick? How did you injure your hand?" The series of questions stunned the three cultivators, and they didn't know how to answer. Could it be that they listened to young master's words, went out without telling him, and even made a move against Manager Lung of the Heavenly Pill Building, only to have their hands broken by Manager Lung in the end? Seeing the three of them hesitate, Morong Ishian's expression sank and he shouted, "Speak." "We went out with young master and saw Manager Lung on the street. Young master told us to follow him. Young master wanted to invite Manager Lung for a drink, but Manager Lung didn't give us face. So young master told me to catch him. Unexpectedly, Manager Lung didn't have any spiritual aura on him, but he was very agile and broke my hand in one move." Chapter 2100. Hearing this, Morong Ishuan's face was as cold as frost. His handsome face was cold as he pursed his lips and didn't say anything. He only looked at the man in luxurious clothes who had a relapse and said, "Since you won't listen to my advice, wait for your second master to come back and have him bring him back." As soon as he finished speaking, he didn't pay any more attention to the person being pressed down and directly turned to leave. Not long after he left, a middle-aged man hurried over under the lead of a cultivator. His expression was ugly as he said, "Why didn't he say anything when he finished his medicine? Didn't I tell you to take good care of him? How could something like this happen?" The second master of the Een family quickly entered the room. When he saw the person who was being pressed down, he hurriedly took out a pill and stuffed it into his mouth. Not long after the pill entered his mouth, the person who was originally struggling and roaring gradually calmed down. He also collapsed and fainted. Seeing this, he coldly swept his gaze over the cultivators. What's going on? Why did Hung have a relapse in advance? The cultivators were just letting out a sigh of relief when they heard the second master's question. They couldn't help but look at each other before reporting the matter to him. Is it the steward of the Heavenly Pill Building? Second Master Een frowned. Didn't you tell me 2 days ago when you came back? We're here to seek medical treatment. Don't provoke the ghost doctor's people. The young master is insensible, but do the people by his side also have no sense of propriety? If we incur a grudge with the Heavenly Pill Building because of this, how will his illness be treated? Have you thought about it? His face was full of anger as he glared at them. Let's see how you'll deal with this after something like this happens. Please punish us, second master. They knelt on one knee. At this moment, they finally understood the severity of the matter. If the young master couldn't be treated, they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to escape the master's anger when they returned. Second Master Een took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, calming his furious mood before asking, "Where's young Master Morong?" Before second master arrived, this subordinate went to invite young Master Morong over. However, after young Master Morong knew that young master attacked that steward Lung, his expression was as cold as ice as he flung his sleeves and left. Say. That cultivator lowered his head and didn't dare to speak. Say what? Second Master Een frowned and asked. Tell second master to bring young master back when he returns, the cultivator whispered. As expected, when second Master Een heard this, his expression changed slightly. He stepped forward and kicked that cultivator. You can't do anything right. He could not hide his anger as he turned around and walked out. The cultivator who had been kicked let out a muffled groan and did not dare to say anything. Second Master Een came to Morong Ishian's small courtyard and saw him sitting in the courtyard drinking tea. His face was expressionless and distant. Seeing this, his eyes flashed and he walked forward. Master Morong. Second Master Een. Morong Ishuan looked at him and nodded slightly. I just found out about what Ziheng did. I didn't expect him to ignore my warnings, even after I warned him again and again. Second Master Een came to the table and sat down. He sighed softly. Now that the illness has flared up like this, and the situation is getting more and more serious, I still haven't seen the ghost doctor. It really makes me worried. Morong Ishian held the teacup in his hand and gently turned it as he said, Second Master Een, forgive me for being unable to do anything about Ziheng. I've already prepared to return to the sect in a few days. At that time, I'll ask for forgiveness from Mu Xian. Chapter 2101. When Second Master Een heard his words, his face was filled with anxiety. He looked at Morong Ishian and said, Young Master Morong, I apologize to you on Hunger's behalf. Please don't lower yourself to his level. Now that we haven't even seen the ghost doctor, how can you wash your hands of it? Morong Ishian shook his head. It's not that I want to bother with him, nor that I want to let it go. I've said before that the ghost doctor's personality is different from ordinary people. It's not easy to ask her to treat someone. Now Ziheng even attacked her subordinates. This isn't something I can control even if I want to. Speaking of this, he smiled bitterly. Moreover, Second Master Een, you've overestimated my relationship with her. He originally came with the mentality of giving it a try, but he didn't expect that Een Ziheng would attack the Heavenly Pill Building's people behind his back. With his understanding of Fengjiu, it was unlikely that she would treat someone. Moreover, if he continued to meddle in this matter, he was afraid that even he would be blacklisted by Fengjiu. Is there no other way? He asked. Morong Ishian was about to shake his head, but he paused and glanced at Second Master Een, saying, I thought of someone. Who? Second Master Een asked. Nalan Mo Chun. He said slowly, his relationship with the ghost doctor isn't shallow. If Second Master Een can ask him to speak up for Ziheng, the chances of getting the ghost doctor to act will be higher. He paused, then continued. However, the premise is that you must not provoke the Heavenly Pill Building's people. Hearing this, Second Master Een was slightly startled. Nalan Mo Chun? Why does this name sound so familiar? He should have heard it before, but he couldn't recall it at the moment. Morong Ishian smiled faintly. He's Tianji Elder's disciple. It's said that he's at home now, and the Nalan family is in 100 River City. Rather than visiting the Alchemy Guild's president, why don't you make a trip to the Nalan family? So he's Tianji Elder's disciple. No wonder it sounds so familiar. He nodded and hesitated for a moment. But I've heard that young Master Emotion doesn't seem to be very friendly. It should be said that ordinary people could not even enter his eyes, let alone speak up for them. Morong Ishian nodded. That's right. But this is indeed an opportunity. If he were to speak up, there's at least a 50 to 60% chance. As long as the ghost doctor is willing to treat him, I think Ziheng's illness can be cured completely. Hearing this, the Second Master Een was moved. He stopped pondering and answered, I will go to the Nalan family. I hope I can see this young Master Nalan. On the other side, when the sky darkened, Lung Hua also returned to the Heavenly Pill Building. You're back. Didn't you say you'd be back soon? Why did it take so long? It can't be that Patriarch Yang and the waiter asked you to stay for dinner, right? Du Fan reclined on the chair and looked at Lung Hua jokingly as he walked in. You're really a genius. Lung Hua smiled and sat down next to him. Originally, I wanted to leave after delivering the medicine. Who knew that the father and daughter pair would insist on having me stay for dinner? I had no choice but to eat a little and chat with them. I only returned to the building now. Lung Hua said warmly as he poured himself a cup of tea. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.